This is a story about power, money, and the greatest financial conspiracy in American history. A story that begins on a freezing cold night in November of 1910. On the night of November 22nd, something extraordinary and deeply secretive was set into motion. A private rail car quietly departed from the Hoboken terminal in New Jersey. Steel plates wrapped around the car reflected the faint yellow lamplight above. Steam rose in thick white clouds as iron wheels ground against the rails. The train pushed forward relentlessly through the cold, silent darkness of the night. It was heading straight south, carrying passengers with a tremendous, dangerous secret inside. These men had received strict orders before boarding the train that evening. They were absolutely forbidden from using their real last names during the trip. Only first names were allowed, between them Nelson, Paul, Frank, Henry, Charles. The command came from the highest levels of American financial power and influence. All regular servants on the train had been replaced with completely new staff. This precaution ensured that no one could recognize any of the powerful passengers. Not a single journalist or newspaper reporter knew about this secret midnight journey. No press coverage. No public announcements. No whispers to anyone on the outside. The train had only one destination in mind, a remote island called Jekyll. Jekyll Island sat isolated off the coast of Georgia, far from prying eyes. It was an ultra-exclusive retreat owned by the wealthiest elite families in America. A place remote enough to hide from the watchful gaze of the entire nation. Surrounded by ancient oak trees draped in Spanish moss and the sound of ocean waves. This island would become the birthplace of the most powerful financial institution on earth. Frank Vanderlip, the president of National City Bank of New York, later confessed. In his memoir titled From Farm Boy to Financier, published in 1935. He wrote, and quote, "I felt as secretive and conspiratorial as any underground plotter ever could," end quote. End quote. If the press had discovered our names together, every proposed bill would be destroyed, end quote. End quote. We knew that the moment our identities were revealed, the plan would collapse immediately, end quote. These words reveal the enormous pressure and paranoia surrounding this clandestine operation entirely. The level of secrecy was unprecedented in the history of American financial planning. To truly understand why these powerful men were so terrified of being discovered, we must travel back in time 3 years to the devastating financial panic of 1907. That year brought the worst financial crisis America had ever experienced until that point. It was a year of absolute chaos and complete breakdown across the entire banking system. Long desperate lines of frightened people formed outside banks across every major American city. Ordinary citizens trembled while clutching paper money, waiting to withdraw every single penny. Bank doors slammed shut within just a few hours of opening each morning. The sound of panicked voices and crying echoed through the streets of Wall Street. Savings that families had built over decades vanished completely in a matter of days. Trust in the banking system evaporated almost overnight like morning dew under harsh sunlight. There was no confidence left. There was no liquidity remaining in the entire system. Nobody could rescue anybody else from this cascading financial disaster sweeping through the nation. At that critical moment, America had absolutely no central bank to stabilize the economy. There was no institution serving as the end quote, lender of last resort end quote, for struggling banks. There was no government mechanism to inject emergency money into the collapsing financial system. The entire American economy was completely exposed and dangerously vulnerable to total destruction. Only one man had enough personal wealth and influence to prevent complete financial annihilation. That man was J.P. Morgan, the legendary titan and supreme power broker of Wall Street. With his enormous fortune and vast private banking network spanning the entire country, Morgan single-handedly patched together America and Opo's financial system and prevented a total nationwide collapse. He used his colossal authority to force other major banks to contribute emergency rescue funds. Through sheer willpower and intimidation, Morgan held the crumbling American economy together alone. But Morgan was growing old, and everyone knew the next crisis could come at any time. the question haunted every banker on Wall Street: what happens when Morgan is no longer here? The devastating shock of 1907 forced the Wall Street elite to confront reality. They realized a painful and undeniable truth about the American financial system and Oppo's fatal weakness. The system was far too fragile, far too vulnerable to panic and sudden collapse. It was dangerously easy for mass hysteria to bring the entire economy crashing down. America desperately needed a powerful central organization to regulate money and print emergency currency. They needed a central bank that could freely create money to rescue the system. A permanent institution that would never again depend on one man and Oppo's personal fortune entirely. But there was one enormous and seemingly insurmountable obstacle standing in their path forward. The American people at that time harbored intense hatred toward Wall Street financiers and bankers. Ordinary citizens viewed Morgan, Rockefeller, and their associates as dangerous market manipulators and thieves. The public saw these wealthy titans as greedy parasites feeding off hard-working American families. If the common people ever discovered that bankers were secretly writing laws for themselves, the United States Congress would face overwhelming public pressure and reject the bill immediately. Newspapers would expose everything, and the entire carefully constructed plan would crumble to dust. Every journalist in America would turn this scandal into front-page headlines for months. Public outrage would make it politically impossible for any politician to support such legislation. That is precisely why this midnight train journey had to be elaborately disguised completely. The official cover story for the trip was presented as a casual duck hunting expedition. Hunting equipment and outdoor gear were carefully prepared to deceive any suspicious journalists watching. Shotguns, hunting boots, and warm outdoor clothing created the perfect illusion of a leisure trip. But the real purpose was far more consequential than anyone on the outside could imagine. The true mission to secretly draft the blueprint for America and Oppo's entire new financial system. A structure that would permanently and irreversibly change monetary power across the entire world. What happened next on that remote island would remain hidden from the public for decades. The full truth would not emerge until long after the participants had passed away from this world. When the train finally stopped and the men arrived, Jekyll Island was completely deserted. Every regular employee at the exclusive Jekyll Island Club had been suddenly dismissed on leave. No official reason was given for the unexpected vacation granted to all the staff members. The purpose was crystal clear: ensure absolutely no one could overhear their secret discussions. All travel records were erased and all identifying documents were carefully hidden from view. Every possible trace of their journey had been methodically eliminated to prevent any discovery. 6 men stepped off the train into the cold air in absolute total silence. Each one represented a massive pillar of financial power in the United States of America. Together, their combined assets equaled roughly 1/4 of the entire world and Oppo's total wealth. Never before in history had so much financial power gathered in one single room together. The decisions made by these 6 men would affect billions of people for over a century. Nelson Aldrich was the most powerful senator in Congress and Rockefeller and Oppo's own father-in-law. Paul Warburg was the brilliant financial mastermind from the prestigious firm Kuhn, Loeb and Company. Abraham Pyatt Andrews served as the Assistant Secretary of the United States Treasury Department. Frank Vanderlip held the powerful position of President of National City Bank of New York. Henry P. Davison was the closest confidant and right-hand man of J.P. Morgan himself. Charles D. Norton was another crucial pillar within Morgan and Oppo's vast and influential banking network. Each man was an essential link in a single interconnected chain of enormous financial power. Together they formed a web of influence stretching between Wall Street and Washington politics. Their unified goal was breathtaking in its ambition to completely redesign America and Oppo's financial machinery. Behind the locked doors of the Jekyll Island Club, tensions ran extremely high constantly. The doors remained sealed nearly 24 hours every single day without any exception whatsoever. No one was permitted to leave the building or make any telephone calls to outsiders. A heavy atmosphere of secrecy and intensity filled the dark wood-paneled rooms completely. The sound of cigar boxes clicking open punctuated the otherwise tense and heavy silence. Research papers rustled constantly as the men consulted stacks of financial documents and historical records. Heated arguments erupted frequently, with passionate debate sometimes continuing until the early morning dawn. The ocean waves crashing on the nearby shore provided the only soundtrack to their secret deliberations. For 9 consecutive days, these men worked tirelessly to design the future of American money. Paul Warburg spoke the most during these intense and exhaustive secret planning sessions together. He spoke slowly and deliberately, with a deep calm voice full of careful calculation. Warburg understood perfectly that ordinary Americans absolutely despised the words and quote, central bank and quote, with passion. He declared firmly and quote, that name alone will kill this bill before it even breathes, end quote. His brilliant and cunning solution was to change the name to deceive public psychology. They would call it the Federal Reserve System, making it sound like a government institution. The word end quote, federal end quote, would create the comforting illusion of democratic government oversight and control. But in reality, this new system would be controlled entirely by private banking interests. The power behind the curtain would belong to Wall Street, not to the American people. Frank Vanderlip later admitted with remarkable honesty in his published personal memoirs and writings. End quote, I strongly suspected that we were creating a monster of unprecedented and terrifying financial power, end quote. But not a single person in that room dared to object to Warburg and Oppos' carefully designed plan. They all understood that this structure was the only way to permanently protect banking power. This was their one chance to build an institution that would serve their interests forever. The detailed blueprint they created was extraordinarily clever in its deceptive structural design throughout. Instead of establishing one single obvious central bank that would alarm the American public immediately, they proposed dividing the system into 12 separate regional branch banks across the country. The intended purpose of this division was to scatter public attention and create democratic illusions. It would give ordinary citizens the comforting but completely false impression of decentralized power. But the real and actual power would be concentrated in just one single branch location. That location was the Federal Reserve Bank of New York, sitting in the heart of Wall Street. The beating heart of Wall Street. The throne where the largest banks already ruled supreme. When the Aldrich Plan was finally presented to the United States Congress, reactions exploded violently. The American public immediately suspected this was legislation written by and for wealthy financiers. Nelson Aldrich and Oppos' name became a lightning rod and powerful symbol of public opposition and anger. The proposed bill faced the very real danger of being destroyed before any serious discussion. Newspapers attacked the plan relentlessly, calling it a Wall Street power grab against democracy. Public demonstrations and angry editorials threatened to bury the legislation under waves of popular outrage. But Wall Street refused to surrender or accept defeat in the face of opposition. They strategically retreated one step backward in order to advance 3 powerful steps forward. They secretly handed the core blueprint to 2 carefully selected Democratic Party congressmen instead. Carter Glass and Robert Owen were chosen specifically to give the plan a fresh political face. The surface-level cosmetic changes were designed purely to mislead and redirect public opinion successfully. Newspapers quickly spread the carefully planted narrative that, end quote, Wall Street has lost all its control, end quote. The American people breathed a collective sigh of relief, believing power had returned to government. Citizens celebrated what they thought was a victory for democracy over Wall Street greed entirely. But the truth remained carefully hidden beneath the fresh coat of new political paint. Frank Vanderlip himself later confessed this uncomfortable truth openly in his detailed written memoirs. He stated clearly, end quote, the new bill was essentially identical to the Aldrich Plan by 90%, end quote. The regional banking structure from the original secret plan remained completely and totally unchanged. Real power was still concentrated in New York, at the absolute epicenter of Wall Street. The fundamental architecture that 6 men designed in secret on Jekyll Island survived completely intact. The greatest deception in American financial history had succeeded beyond anyone and Appo's wildest expectations and dreams. What began as a secret meeting disguised as a hunting trip became the law of the land. On December 23, 1913, the United States Capitol building was nearly completely empty. Most senators and congressmen had already left Washington to return home for the Christmas holiday. The atmosphere inside the grand building was quiet and peaceful, like any ordinary rest day. But deep within those marble halls, an urgent and historic vote was being secretly prepared. The Federal Reserve Act was deliberately brought to a vote at this extremely sensitive moment. The specific timing was carefully chosen to minimize opposition and avoid any extended public debate. With the vast majority of legislators absent, the favorable votes dominated the count overwhelmingly and easily. Only a few hours after the vote concluded, President Woodrow Wilson signed the historic document. With a single stroke of his presidential pen, Wilson changed American history forever that night. The United States of America officially surrendered its power to print money to a privatized system. A network of banks now possessed the extraordinary ability to create credit out of thin air. Money could now be manufactured from nothing, backed by nothing more than institutional confidence and trust. The consequences of this single act would ripple through every decade of the 20th century ahead. From the Great Depression to modern quantitative easing, the Federal Reserve and Appo's shadow touches everything. Evidence displayed on screen the original text of the Federal Reserve Act with Wilson and Appo's signature. A quote widely attributed to Wilson and Appo's later deeply personal regret about what he had done. He reportedly said, and quote, "The power of this nation has fallen into the hands of very few," end quote. These haunting words suggest that even the president himself eventually realized the magnitude of his mistake. From a fraudulent duck hunting trip on a remote and isolated Georgia island paradise, an invisible financial empire was secretly born in the shadows and darkness of complete secrecy. Today, every single United States dollar bill clearly bears the words, end quote, "Federal Reserve Note," end quote. This inscription tells a story that most people never stop to read or truly understand. It is not money issued by the government of the United States of America itself. It is a debt instrument, an IOU, issued by the private Federal Reserve banking system. Every dollar in circulation represents a promise to pay, not actual sovereign government currency at all. This fundamental truth about the nature of modern money remains unknown to most ordinary citizens worldwide. The system designed in secrecy over a century ago still operates largely unchanged to this very day. A profound and deeply troubling question continues to echo powerfully through to the present day. Who truly controls the most powerful and influential currency in the entire modern world today? Who really holds the invisible strings that move markets, governments, and the global economy silently? And can power that was born in absolute secrecy and deception on a hidden island ever truly deliver a fair, transparent, and genuinely equitable economic system for all people everywhere? The answer to that question may determine the future of global finance for generations to come. The shadows of Jekyll Island still stretch long across the financial landscape of our modern world. And the system those 6 men created in secret continues